The Tarkov zombie event has finally come to a close today, and it's time to review whether or not this event was great or whether it was very subpar. I'm seeing a huge difference in opinion between a wide variety of players, whether that is on PvP or PvE. A lot of players finding it a divided topic. Now, let's talk about what BSG did potentially right with this event and some of the things that they did wrong, and we'll get into the right and then the wrong and then the kind of conclusion that I found from playing. And I'm interested to see what you guys are saying about this event. What did you actually think about it? Honestly, leave those in the comment section down below. I'm interested to see, and of course I'll be replying to comments, whatever you have to say. And if you want more videos, different videos, let me know as well. So first things first, what was good? Now, one thing that I did like about this event was the progression from all of the different tasks that were implemented into the game, keeping it fresh. Every single day you seem to get a new task to actually complete up until when the event actually ended. It kind of kept you engaged with the content itself, and of course gave you the option of actually doing things to progress through that event and the storyline that was actually part of the whole zombies event that came on to Tarkov. Now, one of the biggest things that I think kind of really stood out compared to a lot of the other events is that this was a whole map-wide sort of event where you're not limited to one specific map in terms of completing said events. Now, yes, the tasks required you to play certain tasks on certain maps, but the actual event itself was like server-wide across all of the different maps on the game, and it meant that you could play whatever your favorite map is with the zombies applied to them. Now, obviously, this both comes as a positive and a negative, and we'll get into that later, but one of the great things I felt like was that you did have that freedom to play whatever map and experience the whole new zombies mode. Now, one of the other things that kind of intertwines with that is that this whole thing felt very fresh. It was a new lease of life to some of the events, obviously showing that BSG can implement events that are a bit more large scale and follow through with some of the things. A lot of people obviously thinking that the Halloween event was quite late into Halloween, if that makes sense, going on until the 11th of November, obviously Halloween being 31st of October. So definitely felt like they implemented it quite late in terms of the Halloween cycle, if that makes sense, although the event did actually last quite long, and that kind of adds into some of the things that I felt like a lot of people both found as a positive and a negative as well. Me personally, I like the fact that it was on for a long period of time, but there's a few things that I would have changed about like the actual event itself as time went on to allow players to kind of experience it differently. One great thing that I felt like was that, you know, you get constant interaction with a lot of the zombies, and, you know, you don't often get that when you do jump into the maps. There was often a new kind of mechanic style between you, if you were playing PvE, for example, and the AI, things like raiders. I mean, that was the same on PvP as well, that the raiders weren't aggro towards you, which was great. Same with the bosses, etc. It meant that you could farm up some of the bosses if you really wanted to and could deal with the level of zombies that were in the game. And that ramping up style of how many zombies were in the game based on the percentage of the actual map and what map you actually chose, what percentage it was. The lower the percent, the less zombies, the less infected you're seeing in the actual game. The higher, the more zombies, and kind of the more tough it was, to a point where it almost felt a bit ludicrous. And I guess that was definitely a negative for a lot of people. And I think, although there were quite a few positives, the actual system itself was a little bit grindy. There were some things that I felt was just kind of a waste of time, and a lot of it was kind of just reskinned AI and very annoying to have to deal with. The level of the zombies, it would have been nicer to actually see more kind of zombie types within the game, but of course, being a first event, you know, we can't expect a huge amount. And of course, maybe next year, if that same sort of thing happens, if they implement a similar sort of feature, that we'll see some more levels of zombies, you know, more difficult ones, and less of the just hordes of zombies which they just throw at you, which definitely felt very annoying, especially if you're just trying to play the game normally. That definitely felt really annoying to have to deal with. And although they did have some bosses and stuff like that that were in the game, it didn't feel too rewarding to actually play the mode. Obviously, you can't loot the zombies either, so that felt a bit annoying that you're having to spend so much on ammunition to actually get through the raids, because of the fact there's like, you know, you could deal with like 30, 40, 50 zombies if you're playing on PvE, and on PvP you're still having to fight with other players and other PMCs and stuff, as well as dealing with just an insane amount of zombies. And although you could make a decent amount of money, it isn't really that experience that maybe a lot of players were wanting, which is where it kind of came into the friction zone between people who enjoyed it because it's something new, it's fresh, and it's a limited time event. You know, it's not on forever, which is kind of the camp I was in. If I wasn't enjoying it, I'd just, you know, jump off. I wouldn't play the game. And although a lot of people want to play Tarkov how it is intended originally, you know, sometimes, you know, you see with a lot of other games, they have similar sort of things. The one thing that I would have maybe changed is add it in as a separate game mode maybe, or like a different server where you could pick a normal raid where you're not really interested in the event for that time. Maybe you completed all the tasks and you just wanted to get back to normal Tarkov. That would have definitely been something that I would have implemented in, and probably an oversight by BSG as to, you know, some people might not actually want to play the event, and you should give them the option to actually play a normal game of Tarkov should they want to, especially on the PvE mode, for example. You know, it's supposed to be a solo player, you know, you can activate the event if you want to, you can turn it off. Maybe on PvP it's slightly harder to do that, depending on player numbers. Maybe there's like a split of like 80% playing the zombie mode and 20% playing normally, which means servers are going to be annoying to fill up. I don't know, but at the same time, it would have been nice to have seen a kind of split where you could choose not to play the event, and I think that would have been a nice thing to add in, especially later on in the event. Maybe for the first like 5 days, week or whatever, it's fine, but then as time goes on, you know, you can play Tarkov normally as you normally would, and I felt that maybe that length of time was both a blessing and a curse, because a lot of people did end up finishing a lot of the tasks pretty quickly, and then it was just grinding out zombies raid after raid after raid. And although it was fun for the first week, maybe it just ended up being a bit dry, a bit boring, and the AI of those zombies wasn't particularly great either, and I felt that definitely impacted the overall experience, which is where having those levels of zombies or something more engaging, more difficult, and less of just the zombie spam, which was definitely seen on a lot of the maps, would have been a much better thing for me, at least when I was playing through the game. It just felt very boring, and especially if you were just trying to grind through some of the tasks that are in the normal game, not just the zombies tasks. Another thing, I felt that a lot of people are complaining about the fact that, yes, you're having to take in so much ammunition and you're not getting anything in return for taking out the zombies, other than the map is a bit more freer and you can go into areas that you normally wouldn't. So for example, on Lighthouse, because the kind of rogues weren't actually aggressive towards you, the bosses weren't aggressive towards you, you could run around the map provided you taken out the zombies absolutely perfectly fine, and they wouldn't aggro towards you, which meant, you know, you could loot up areas of the map quite freely, but at the same time getting there through waves and waves and waves of zombies was not the best in the world at all. So that was definitely something that caused a lot of friction with the community and player base, from what I've seen on comments on videos and stuff like that, both on mine and on other people's channels, streams, that sort of thing, just following along, and that opinion definitely felt true. So it was like overall, it definitely could have been better. Now, obviously, we did have some of the maps that were actually completely contagious free, so no infected on them. That was a good thing to have into the game. But on the flip side, I felt like maybe that could have been something a bit more to allow players who didn't want to play the event to have that option. Now, obviously, having one map that isn't infected so you can run around was great, because you could play that map and not have to deal with the infected if you wanted a bit of time off from just playing the mode and the event. But at the same time, it was only one map and you couldn't choose what that map was, which definitely meant that you were forced to play maps that maybe you didn't really want to play at the time. And so maybe having a couple of maps, 3 maps or whatever, that weren't infected or something like that could have been good. And then maybe like the last 2 days, everywhere was just infected or something like that. And I felt like that would have been a better start to the actual infection thing that they had, like the cycle that they had going on. And I think that they'll learn from this event. And of course, you can always give your feedback as to the event in the survey section if you haven't already. But that is something that I felt would have been a good addition. I think overall, event-wise, it was a good start for a larger event type. And I'm hoping that BSG don't see this as like a failure and don't try to experiment more with different events that are more wide-scale and affect various different things within the game, and see it as more like a tester experience-based thing, see exactly what the player base felt like and the complaints and also the positives that players actually found, which is kind of why I wanted to make this video in the first place and why I wanted your feedback as well, because then we can get a better opinion as to the whole event. Maybe you absolutely hated the event because of one specific thing, and maybe BSG, if they changed that, you would have actually really enjoyed it and felt like you could play more. But at the same time, maybe you just absolutely loved it and there was some specific things that you really loved about it. Maybe it was looting up the pumpkins, maybe it was going through and having the bosses not aggro you, this sort of stuff, you know. Finding out exactly what you enjoyed and stuff like that is really important. I especially like just running around and being able to loot up various different areas that you normally would be a lot more contested, but at the same time having that difficulty factor when you do get swarmed by like 30 people at the same time was also fun. But having a balance between the two is probably where you want to be, and that's kind of what I would hope that they would do in the end, and for future events that come into the game. I just wanted to give my overall opinion on the event. So total, I think it was a good event, but there were definitely some things that just agitated me, annoyed me, and could have been way better. Things like, for example, the number of infected on some of the maps was just way too high, which is where having a more difficult infected would have been a better way to go, so that you still have difficulty in playing the event and it was challenging, but you just didn't feel like you were just spamming out zombies until the end of the raid. I think that would have been a much better system. Let me know what you guys actually think about it. Overall, it was okay. I think it could have been better, but at the end of the day, it was a decent start to some of the more widespread events, and hopefully BSG continue to do so. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and of course subscribe down below if you want more Escape from Tarkov videos, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.